Okay, so as I said, we'll begin. Today we'll proceed at a much higher pace than we usually do. This is a more realistic pace rather than an explanatory pace. Usually I dissect each question and give you multiple ways of solving, explain each, reading between the lines and everything. Today we are not going to do that. Today we are going to solve questions in a way how you would attempt them at CAT, right? And sometimes I may not resist the attempt to explain, but most of the time I'll try to proceed as realistically as possible. So make sure you note how I'm processing the questions. Imagine you're sitting in the CAT hall and you're encountering these questions as such. All right, so let's begin. Okay, first of all, read the question very carefully. Very important. Each question has a sentence with two blanks followed by four pairs of words as choices. From the choices, select the pair of words that can best complete the given sentence. All right. So it is difficult for a modern audience accustomed to of film. First thing, identify the part of speech. What is being asked by the blank? Is it? Please mute yourself. Is it adjective? Is it noun? Is it a verb? Is it an adverb? Identify what part of speech is being asked. Very important. Is it a? You don't need, even if you don't know what an adjective is, what a noun is exactly. Just make sure you understand whether it's a name or it's a quality, right? Like red, warm, hot, blue, soft. These are all qualities. And names, obviously, tiger, London. These are names, right? So you identify whether a word is a descriptive word or a name, nominal, right? Kindly mute yourselves, whoever this is. Suman, if you can mute yourself, please. Okay. It is difficult for a modern audience accustomed to the dash of film and television. Uh, Suman, can you please mute yourself, please? It's echoing because someone has kept their speaker on, which is reflecting my voice. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you for. Okay. Okay. Great. So we can continue. Okay. Yeah. So it is difficult for a modern audience accustomed to the dash of film and television to appreciate opera with its grand spectacle and dash gestures. So now we have to see, okay, so something of film and television. So you have to establish an analogy here, right? So it's not very different in the abstract sense from something what you call proportion. A is to B as to C is to D. So what is the relation between A and B? And is the same relation that holds for C and D, right? This is the first question. So I'm giving you some context here. I'll not be doing the same for the rest. So always try to identify what is a common relation rather than focusing on the objects. Focus on the relation between two pairs. Right. So it is a two-tier question. You have to first identify the relation in the first pair, then identify the relation between the second pair. Same relation in the second pair. Right. That is the basic idea. So sophistication and monotonous. So see, if something is a grand spectacle, it needn't be monotonous. A lot of people find opera to be monotonous, but if the author clearly doesn't, since it calls it a grand spectacle, a spectacle is something that you view with awe. So it certainly is not correct. Flamboyance of film and television, no, that is more of a characteristic, or it seems more of a characteristic of opera. Opera is flamboyant, it's more colorful, it's more grandiose, right? Minutiae and extravagant. Suppose you don't know what minutiae means. I've already told you, grope for the closest word that you know in darkness, right? So if you beat around the bush, you'll realize that minute is the word that you're looking for. So minute means something very tiny, and in more of a figurative sense, it means something that is a very small detail, a very fine detail, or very elaborate detail, right? So film and television are small screens, obviously, but they have a greater detail, right? They have this high resolution pictures. They have even the story and plot typically shown in modern film and television is very detailed, where it has a very fine resolution at the granular level. While opera is uh, larger but relatively simpler and more impressive, right? There are bigger, broader strokes in opera. So I can know that, okay, this is C, minutiae and extravagant, right? So extravagant means someone who is willing to spend more. So again and again, I've told you to imagine words in new context, right? The extravagant can be used when if you buy a car that you don't really need, but you still end up buying that car because you just want to show off, or maybe it's a status symbol, or you really like it. So that's called an extravagant act. when you buy a luxury car and you really don't need it or can't afford it exactly, but somehow you manage to do that. But here extravagant means someone who is willing to spend enough. So spend enough in what? Spend enough in terms of the performance. So opera is a grand performance. Subtle, it's certainly not subtle. If it's a grand spectacle, how can it be subtle? Subtle means something that is under expressed, right? So it cannot be subtle. So C, definitely. Now let's move on to the next question. Through his music, though his music reveals the composer's dash and seriousness, his manner displays his naivety and dash. Right. So naivete means a childlike quality, a childlike foolishness, imbecility, what we call imbecility, basically. Right. So what is sophistication? Sophistication is some sort of refinement. I've always told you, you need not know the exact meaning of words, right? Even you basically need to have an idea of which side the word is on, which group the word lies in. Sophistication is something generally good, right? It's something very refined, sophisticated tools, for example. So his music revealed the composer's dash and seriousness. So this really shows me that okay, it cannot be something negative. So, immaturity and naivety and immaturity, you first might be tempted to think that, okay, immaturity and naivety mean the same thing. That is kind of the point. Why would the author resort for tautology? Why would he use two words that mean almost exactly the same, not even, close things, right? So, if you look here, profundity is something that goes with seriousness. It complements it. It goes doesn't mean it means the same. It fits very well with seriousness. Someone is profound and someone is serious. So if you are profound, what does profundity mean? Being profound means you have some deep insight into something, right? So it's always there that if you have some deep insight into something, you tend to be serious about it. So profundity goes well with seriousness. As for now, one mistake what people can make here is they read it as ingenuousness. If I just put an I here, becomes ingenuousness. So if you are palpitating in the cat and just skimming through stuff, you might read this ingenuousness as ingeniousness. And ingenious means something that is very innovative or creative, a very product of intelligent work, right? So you might think that okay, this is wrong, but ingenuousness, very innocent or foolish in a childish way, right? So ingenuousness fits much better there, right? And uh, profundity is something that is very obviously. I've told you what profundity is. Levity is something where you are treating something in a mocking way. The levity is an antonym of seriousness, right? So levity is an antonym of seriousness, and that obviously won't go there. So now both immaturity and ingenuousness are synonyms of naivety, but since profundity is a very strong connect there, so we can assume that okay, the author wanted to use two words there, while in the first sentence, in the first part, they have used a better combination. Right. Okay. Now next question. Very quickly, let's move on. Just a second. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just increase my pace and give you lesser and lesser explanation unless the question is really compelling in that context. In spite of the dash of the minister's sermon, most of the people were dashed when it was over. So a sermon is a very long. Traditionally it's something only in the context of churches, a very long Christian preaching sort of thing, a ceremony or a event where a long talk is delivered, a long speech is delivered, diction. But nowadays, sermon refers satirically or analogically to any long form of speech, right? Any long and monotonous, boring form of speech which you really don't want to hear. So, in spite of the minister, I just and most of the people were dashed when it was over. So I know in spite of this simply means that the two blanks are opposite to each other. Very simple. That's the first insight you can draw without even seeing the options. So now I know that whatever option is correct, its words should be opposite to each other, right? So yeah, right, true, correct answer. So see, I know that vehemence and moved aren't two very opposite things. If you are vehement, if you are very persuasive, if you are very aggressive, then you can move a person. Obviously you can move a person emotionally, you can move a person ideologically. So B is not correct, eliminated, because in spite of is there should be a contrast. So passion, fidgety, right? Passion and fidgety, this kind of make sense, because see, if someone gives a very passionate speech and still the people there are fidgeting, like you are scratching your head because you don't want to listen to him, or you are shifting in your seat uncomfortably because you don't want to listen to him, so that is something called fidgeting, right? But then again, it's not such a good connect, so I'll just keep it on the side. Ardor and restless. So ardor means something, ardor means a hard work, right? Ardor means any hard toil basically. And restless is obviously again something restless. You when you are restless, you fidget basically, so you can consider it an analog of fidgety. But that is also there, so it is also not exactly wrong. Now let us see the fourth option. All right, so it's not very correct either. So now the thing is, people are usually fidgety or restless during something, right? But here the sermon is over. So if the sermon is over, why are they restless? Like if the boring speech is over, you can leave, right? Why will you be fidgety, or why will you be, restless after the speech is over? Simple. है ना? So now that is something that is very clear here. So 1 and 3 cannot be there. 2 I have already told you that not opposite. So in spite of, it doesn't fit with in spite of. Prosaicness and affected. Prosaic is something. What does prosaic mean? See, it seems a very strange word because it has a SAIC, a combination that is very rare nowadays. So it's very simple actually. It's nothing but prosaic. It comes from prose. So there are two forms of literature, prose and poetry, right? So you might not think so, but people usually consider poetry to be more appealing than prose, right? So poetry is considered something easier to digest, more beautiful, more appealing, something you would like to read rather than prose, right? Prose is something like a long paragraph, fiction or non-fiction, maybe story, maybe a newspaper article. That's prose. And poetry is something written in a verse that has a might or might not have a meter or a rhyming scheme and all that. So that is there, right? So prosaic. Now prosaic originally meant anything that is written in prose format, but it came to mean boring, right? Boring or lackluster. More in the sense of, more a correct word would be lackluster. So prosaic is anything that is lackluster. So if the speech was lackluster, in spite of that, in spite of the speech being dry, people were still affected. People still were influenced by his words. So this makes sense, right? This makes sense. And people can be affected at the end of the speech. In fact, that's what matters when you have realized the whole picture of the speech. So at the end of the speech, being restless or fidgety doesn't make sense, but being affected makes sense. है ना? So that is there, right? So that's why for number 3 we have D, prosaicness and affected. Okay, there is no necessary connection between dollar and what can be purchased for a dollar. The value of money is dash and can be easily dashed by supply and demand. So again, volatile, conventional is obviously wrong, right? Since it's on the opposite side of things. Volatile, arbitrary and unpredictable, both, all three words show that something is not very stable, not very predictable, that not very stable basically. So conventional is something that is okay, that's not correct, that's not that's a very not not something unstable. Conventional, it has been coming down for years, so obviously it's something that has long been stable. Maybe it has some inherent stability, right? So unpredictable, D is wrong, obviously, right? Now let us see for 4. So what can we say is, the sentence is that the value of money can be easily changed, right? So if the value of money can be easily changed, it can be easily altered by supply and demand. So obviously there is an altered there, right? Because see, it's very simple. It's simply written that there is no necessary connection between a dollar and what can be purchased for a dollar. So today, if you take a $1 bill, maybe a $1 bill, $1 note, and go and purchase maybe a candy, right? And tomorrow the candy's price has risen to $2. So there is no fixed connection, right? So what does it mean? The value of money has changed from one candy to two candies or one and a half candy. So it doesn't remain fixed. So obscured is wrong, overpowered is wrong. What is correct is altered. Altered means simply means changed, right? So very simple question, one of the easiest of the lot. Arbitrary and altered, both words make sense, right? Okay. Now question number 5. So okay. The dualistic pattern of development in South Asia has meant an incomplete dash transition with the dash prevalence of diseases of poverty caused due to poor living conditions and poor nutrition, along with diseases induced by affluent lifestyles. When in the actual CAT exam that I've asked you to imagine right now, you don't spend your time reading every poor nutrition. Now you are actually thinking about poor nutrition, then thinking about poor living conditions. Don't do that. Simply string everything together and think, okay, it's something bad, something maybe that you would expect people to be suffering from. The people who live on the fringes, they suffer from these things due to the shortcomings of society. So anyways, the dualistic pattern of development in South Asia has meant an incomplete dash transition. So it is certainly related to diseases, right? I know that this is related to diseases. It clearly has the word disease, prevalence of diseases of poverty. See, it doesn't say you can first people interpret a disease of poverty as okay, it's actually a disease, but disease of poverty is a metaphorical sense here, right? But this is diseases of poverty. So this actually talks about biological diseases and ailments, right? Those diseases that occur due to poverty, that are common or prevalent in poor people, right? So it is not telling that poverty is a disease in that idiomatic sense. No, that's not the case here. So see, it's a three-tier thing. First, when you are taught, you think you make the mistake of taking diseases. Okay, so poverty, the disease of poverty, you think that it is an actual disease. Then someone tells you no, we are calling poverty a disease as a metaphor. And then now that metaphorical sense is also gone, it is back to the literal sense. There we are talking of literal diseases. So anyways, I know it can either be it cannot be episodic, obviously. Endemic is a type of disease, but it's not very widespread. Endemic literally means a disease which is confined to a place. So epidemiological can be true, pathological can be true, right? So pathological prevalence of diseases doesn't make a lot of sense, because prevalence means how widespread something is. What gives you an idea of how spread a disease is? Pandemic or epidemic. These words give you, right? So epidemiological is obviously correct. Right. So, epidemiological, when you put it there in the first blank, it goes well with prevalence that comes later on. Right. And if you look, simultaneous prevalence of diseases of poverty. So these diseases, many diseases exist together. No, so that is there. So it makes good sense. It makes good sense. While epidemic, pathological, and epidemic don't make sense, right? Because there are multiple diseases being talked about. So simultaneous makes sense. Simultaneous goes with multiple things, right? That is the whole point of simultaneous. So that's why our answer for 5 is B, right? Okay, now next question. By ensuring guaranteed wage employment for 100 days to any adult in a household who is willing to work, the NREGA is the first legislation that compels the state to provide a social safety net for the poorest people of this country and seeks to dash the urgent issues of hunger and rural distress that dash large parts of India, right? So see, large parts of India, something should be in the sense of widespread effect, right? So it's a large part of India. So there can be a word like maybe plagues a large part of India, that uses a metaphor of a analogy of a widespread disease, right? Or it can be pervade, right? Like maybe like a vapor or a mist that spreads all around a place, right? That can be there. So it talks about yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So the correct one would be loom large, right? Loom. So all pervading is also correct, right? But if you see, you cannot attack hunger, right? Hunger is your enemy, granted, but can you attack hunger, right? It's not something that you can attack. You can tackle hunger, right? You can tackle a problem. You cannot attack a problem unless that problem is actually something that you are, another entity like you that you are battling, right? Maybe a nation versus nation or person versus person. So although pervade would have been fitting in this context, loom is better. Tackle and loom, the combination here is better here, right? So but again, let us see if other elements are there or not, right? So let's see, one another thing is that confront and affect seeks to confront the urgent issues of hunger and rural distress that dash large parts of India. So this option, the problem with this option is that all four, even affect and afflict, yeah, there are this is one of the most confusing questions out there. So I want your focus here, right? One of the most confusing, because loom, pervade, even you can't say that affect is not correct, because although affect is a very general word, unlike pervade or loom, which have clear sense of something being large or widespread, right? Loom means like anything which is huge, like a mountain looms in the distance. So it's like, okay, something is so huge that it seems even from a lot from afar it seems to be quite visible. And pervade is something that is very widespread, more in a horizontal sense or more in a omnidirectional sense. So that is there, while loom is something more in a vertical sense. But affect and afflict also you cannot rule out, right? So this question is actually quite difficult. So just a second. Yeah, so a loom, but the problem with loom is loom should be used with over, right? Loom over, you loom over something, because I told you it's in a vertical sense. The clouds are looming over us, right? So the over part is missing, right? So one is thus you can rule out one. Now the next is okay, right? So attack is also an issue, as I already told you. Now, see, there is one thing that if you notice, there is a word used here that the country seeks to, right? Country seeks to. So, what do you think makes more sense with seeks to? Seeks to means the country is still precarious. It's not sure whether this will happen. It's not very determined, but very resolute to do something. So, it is just seeking to do something, right? So, it cannot. So, tackle again doesn't make a lot of sense here. Confront, if you seek to do something, you are not directly confronting it, right? You are waiting to confront it. So address would be better, right? Address is in fact a more for used in context of somewhere Narega and all is being used. So address is certainly the key to solving it. Otherwise, if you just go by afflict, affect, loom, and pervade, it's very difficult. In loom you can eliminate, pervade, affect, and afflict you will be stuck, and you cannot say that one is more correct than the other, right? So you have to rely on the first blank. The first blank says that the net for the poorest people of this country and seeks to what the urgent issues. So when the government, when there is policy making is a very slow process, right? Bureaucracy, policy making, you know how slow bills are passed. Suppose a road has suppose there has to be a social reform, then someone raises the bill, it comes, goes back, comes to lower house, upper house, president, all that happens. And then, so address is a better word, right? I address a problem, like I think of it, very formal, much more appropriate in a political and policy making context. That's why I've asked you to make sure of connotations, right? Attack, tackle, not very, confront, even not very good in a formal context. Address, a very formal word, not that address. Address as in, the address can be used in various ways. So address, right? I hope you got my point. So question 6 was really difficult. In case you have any doubts here, ask me, right? Okay. Even if a religiously intolerant group should be secure power in the states or in the center, which is much less probable, the constitution remains as the dash of our liberties, and any legislation openly dash of its clauses is either unthinkable or foredoomed to failure, right? So again, if you are intimidated by certain words, it's very simple. Foredoomed, for example, you think what does, or you might read it wrong. As I told you, you might have read it as foredoomed or foredoomed, right? Right. So it's simply foredoomed. Fore means before, earlier, right? Doomed. So anything that is earlier on, it is decided that okay, this is going to fail, right? You know beforehand that okay, foredoomed. It's not, doomed is something when something bad happens or you're destroyed, but foredoomed is when you know, okay, this car is going at 120 miles per hour. It's going to hit that barricade there. I know it even before it hits, right? So that is something, for that is what foredoomed means. So okay, now legislation openly in what of its clauses? Violation is correct. Violation of its clauses is fine. Transgression is correct. Defiance is correct. So I note okay, the second blank is not very helpful to me. Right, not very helpful. Maybe I can get to the more subtleties later on. So what I can see is touchstone. Touchstone is not something that not something that is forming a base of something. Base of some, touchstone is a very different thing. Cornerstone, yes, cornerstone is something that is laid in the foundation of a building. Right. Cornerstone is something that is laid in the foundation of a building. And underpinning is also something that that lies or that supports on its base something, right? And then there is yeah, any doubts? Okay. And then there is bedrock, right? Bedrock is also, so again, this question is also very tricky. So typical of them to frame such questions, again a very difficult question, so I want you to pay attention when I describe. So see, now the point is that cornerstone refers to something that is very, very specific or singular, right? So the constitution is not a very specific thing. The constitution is a very broad thing. It's a very general giant thing, right? uh, what happened? Any problems with the recording? The recording is going on. It's fine. Recording is going on. All right. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So see, now, and now listen very carefully to what I am saying. Cornerstone and bedrock. in your mind both mean the same thing, right? Even when I use a working definition, I say that okay, like they just give you an example, right? I'll just give you an example. So cornerstone and bedrock both are basically uh, things that come from the ground. Like a cornerstone is anything that is laid in the foundation of a building to support it, and bedrock is basically the lowest tough layer of the earth, where when you finish digging there is soil, there is coarser soil, and finally you hit bedrock where you find it very difficult to dig, right? Now cornerstone is something very very particular, very dainty that you put, right, compared to a bedrock. A bedrock is more spread out, literally the entire earth is covered in a layer of bedrock, right? So when we are talking of constitution, what do you think? Is the constitution a cornerstone of India, or is it a bedrock of India? What do you think of this? What do you make of this? Right. Yeah, it's a bedrock of India, right? Because constitution pervades all aspects. It's not one particular thing that's put there in this edifice, right? So bedrock means basically a more broader sense of things. So there is no other way of cracking it unless you know that okay, underpinning and cornerstone are more of a specific thing, very refined particular things, while bedrock is something that is much broader. There is no other way to crack this question. So keep in mind that words have their nuances, which are very important, right? So yeah, on the on one hand, there is the dash of innocence of any person charged with a crime before his conviction, and on the other hand, there is the ever-present danger of cases being dash on political opponents, right? Given the control that politicians in office exercise over the police force and prosecution. Okay, so now we know that okay, so suppose you now there are things that need to be clarified here. Now see, foist essentially means the same thing as imposed, right? So that is there, but the key here is assumption and presumption. So on one hand there is the presumption, so you're not presuming anything. Presumption is more like something that your presumption is pre, so before you're making something before then it's due, you're making an assumption before it's due. So that's not there. The innocence of any person charged with a crime before his conviction, there's something very reasonable, a very reasonable logic there, right? So that is something that is true. Now probability, now there is the probability of innocence. So although probability means the same thing, it doesn't fit in this context, right? Possibility, again, with the for the same logic that probability doesn't fit, it doesn't make sense. Now between presumption and assumption, both have negative choices. Neither word fits here. Okay, again, be very careful when I say this. See, I can argue against presumption as well, that okay, presumption of there is the presumption of innocence of any person. So if I say that okay, this is an assumption, I'm taking it that it is a logical phenomena, right? It's a logical thing. And if I'm taking it as a presumption, I'm talking of an actual case where you presume that a person is not guilty, right? So both these things are there. So now you have both can be viewed. With one angle it looks wrong, with one angle it looks correct. Now how to identify which one is more compelling, or which one should I mark as the answer in my exam? So now look, okay, innocence of a person being charged with a crime before his conviction, right? Now see, this is not talking of presumption or assumption in the sense that this is a logical, right? That is not the case. If you read the passage carefully, if you just read the first two lines, you might think that okay, this is talking of a philosophical debate. Can you please mute yourselves, whoever this is? Very distracting. Yes, Suman, can you please mute yourself? Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now you see, assumption of innocence of any person. We don't assume the innocence of any person. The Indian law says, what does the Indian law say? That unless proven guilty, any person who is charged with a crime should be taken to be innocent, right? So this is not an assumption that you make. Assumption is much more in a very arbitrary sense, or very that kind of sense, very non-formal sense, but a very something assumption you make all the time. Assumption is something you make in science. Assumption is something you make everywhere. Presumption is something very formal. Presumption means something that you are taking because of a legality. So presumption is more correct here, just because just because it connotes better with this sense, with the legal sense here being specified, right? So you might know that this person is has done wrong, but since the law doesn't recognize it, you have to presume that this person is innocent unless he is proven guilty. So again, a very slippery question here. Okay, 9. Weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, and nuclear, in the hands of dash regimes and dash terrorists constitute the gravest threat to the world. So, if you just a second. Yeah. So, weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, and nuclear, in the hands of what kind of regime? So, again, reformist regimes won't have chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons, right? Libertarian regimes would not likely have these weapons. If they are regimes, they certainly won't have for their own citizens, right? And authoritarian regimes can certainly have, totalitarian regimes can certainly have, and terrorists cannot be unbigoted. Right. Bigot, basically, most terrorists are essentially inspired by some kind of bigotry, maybe racial, maybe national, maybe ethnic, maybe religious. So I know that 4 is also not correct, certainly. So yeah. So totalitarian regimes and authoritarian regimes. Now I'm split between these two. Right. Rabid is again not a very appropriate word for terrorists, because terrorists are not some mad criminals who are insanely attacking you. Like, some people may call them figuratively mad, but they're certainly not like a mad dog. They plan and they do things that way, right? So rabid is again something that doesn't go well with that. So I've eliminated everything. I only have A and B remaining. So let us see which one should we go for. Now, totalitarian regimes and radical terrorists. Radical terrorists doesn't make sense. Why? Because is there any kind of terrorist who is not radical? Being a terrorist itself means that someone is radical, right? And theocratic terrorists, again. Now, with theocratic terrorists, the problem is that why you are only singling out one kind of terrorist, right? Why are you only singling out a religious terrorist? A terrorist can be nationalist. A terrorist can be race motivated. Like, there are white terrorists. Like, there are various kinds of those things are there. People who attack due to ethnicity and all that. So now see, I'm telling you from your perspective. I'm taking every answer and telling you the pros and cons and weighing in on that, right? So in the exam, you'll face this dilemma that every option seems wrong in some way and every option seems correct in some way, right? So first, I just even with the right answer that I know is right, I just try to explain what you might think is makes it wrong, right? So I'm just trying to explain to you that. So but now there are two problems that are coming very clearly. Just listen to me very carefully. Radical is tautology. You understand what tautology is? When two words are used that mean the same, right? That mean the same, or not exactly. Even if they don't mean the same, the usage doesn't add any new shade of meaning or refinement of meaning to the entire term, right? If I say cold ice, so although cold and ice don't mean the same, saying cold ice doesn't give any new value to ice. I know it's ice. It's obviously cold, right? I know that ice is cold, or hot fire, or wet water. So, like, you can say that, okay, wet and water are two different things, but water is all obviously wet, right? So, radical terrorist doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's not. You see, theocratic terrorist is very arbitrary. There is no reason why theocratic. You understand, right? Theocratic means governed by religion. So theocratic terrorists, first of all, theocratic regimes can have terrorists. How can a terrorist be theocrat? Right? A theocrat is someone who rules based on religion. For example, Iran is a theocracy. So if Iran decides to send a terrorist, the rulers themselves, the Ayatollah themselves, will not go. Right? They will send some youth from their country, some poor youth, or some maybe some spy or military person from there. So again, theocratic makes lesser of a sense. The only problem with radical is that it's tautological. It's fine, you can tolerate. At least its meaning aligns with it. Although radical is useless, but it's not unfitting. Whereas theocratic doesn't fit there, right? So that's why neither of them is accurate, but one is less wrong, right? So that's why for 9, we will go with 1, right? So see, you see, this is how complicated things can get at times. So that's why I'm trying to explain to you why the right answer may also seem wrong to you in the exam, so that you don't repeat the mistake that I'm trying to show you. Whoever this is, please mute yourself. Yeah. Okay. Question number 10. Dash establish the principle of religious tolerance. Okay, very quickly. Now, this is something that all five options are similar. I don't even need to read the entirety of the question very carefully to eliminate the first few, right? Well, I don't even need to read very carefully. So, religious tolerance. Fanatics cannot establish religious tolerance. Fanatics are literally people who are mad about ideology or religion, right? It cannot be fanatics. Now, out of these four, there would be something that is there, right? Now let us see what it is. So yeah, so if you look, the word religious tolerance means that okay, there can be liberalism or there can be egalitarian. What is egalitarianism? Equality, right? The ideology that advocates equality for that. Now if you see facilitates the religious freedom of other sects and churches. This doesn't make sense. Facilitate is a word that you use for something like, you know, a process, more of a like a process of carrying out something. So you don't need to facilitate speech, you don't need to hold the hand of speech and take it with you, right? You just need to give people freedom to just say what they want, right? Constricts is not correct. Why? Because uh, oh sorry, constricts is correct. Why? Because there is a not here. See, again, I also miss that not, and most likely in the exam pressure you will also miss that not, right? So dash established the principle of religious tolerance, the idea that religious goals could not be pursued in the public in a way that dashes the religious freedom of other sects. So not, right? So there must be something there must be something that is negative here, right? There must be something that is negative. So I can see that facilitates is something positive. So even if the not was not there, still facilitates would have been wrong. And if the not is there, then definitely facilitates is wrong, right? So there is constricts, restricted, and abets. Now let us see. Abets means, if you don't know, abets means to kind of add to something, contribute, or help something, right? So again, now pluralism and abets. This also doesn't fit there. Although pluralism fits there, abets doesn't help it. So we are down to two choices, restricted and constricts. Now this won't help us a lot directly. Restricted and constrict mean roughly the same thing, very little difference there. And a person with figurative speech can say that okay, my option is more correct, and another one says that okay, my option is more correct. So egalitarianism is the idea that everyone is equal, right? While liberalism is the idea that advocates freedom. Liberty is freedom, right? So which one do you think is more fitting? Equality here or liberty? Which one is more important? Obviously people who are egalitarians are often liberals, and people who are liberals are often egalitarians. Very few exception where someone is liberal but not egalitarian, or someone considers himself to be egalitarian but not liberal. Both are parts of democracy, right? Liberty, fraternity, equality. So liberalism is about liberty, egalitarianism is about equality, right? So yeah, so what do you think should be the word to be used here? Just let me know in the chat which one do you think is correct. It's very simple, it's right before you. It's talking of religious freedoms here, right? It's talking of religious freedoms, it's not directly talking of religious equality. You might say that equality is connected to that, but religious equality is not mentioned anywhere, while freedom is directly mentioned here, right? So that's why liberalism is correct too. Any doubts here, you ask me. Okay, these questions are very tricky and very important to be resolved. So if you have any lingering persisting doubts or confusion, just make sure you make it clear, right? And never ever miss the word not. Very important, right? That is there. Okay, now let us move on to the next question. So uh, each question below has a sentence with two blanks followed by four pair of words as choices. From the choices, select the pair of words that can best complete the given sentence, right? So okay, to every finance minister, the presentation of a budget is a dash occasion, and he wants to leave his dash for the future to see. Now whenever I'm in such an exam, what I do is I just try to imagine the scene that is being conveyed here. So a finance minister is presenting a budget. So if you have just come across it in the news, you can see how excited the finance minister is, like on the day of the budget being presented. It's very simple that okay, if that it's something very important and it happens once in a year, once in a financial year, right? Once in a financial year you get a budget, unless there is some kind of disruption or something, some emergency budget has to be presented, uh, maybe due to some reason, but unless that, it occurs once a year. So it definitely would be something that is momentous, right? Moment that occurs in a moment. Now, if you are thinking that okay, momentary and mark are also things that are there, right? Okay, but before I get to A, let me just get to A and C later. Let me eliminate these. Facetious is obviously wrong. Legacy is very fitting, but facetious is obviously wrong. Inspiration is obviously not fitting here, right? So B and D are eliminated, right? Now, coming to this, right? So sorry, yeah. So now see, the point is that okay, now every finance minister, the presentation of a budget is a dash occasion and he wants to leave his for the future to see. So leave his mark or leave his imprint, which one of the following do you think is makes more sense for you? So I want to know what you think first, and why do you think so? Like mark and imprint, both are similar things, right? Both are similar things. Leave his mark or leave his imprint, right? So yeah, okay, keep the answers flowing. Okay, I'm getting mixed reviews. I'm getting both answers from you, right? Okay, so a lot of you are saying imprint, but a number of you have said mark as well. So see, it is definitely now the point is that what you are making a mistake is that momentous and momentary both at a first glance seem something that talks something that happens in a moment, or something that happens in a what, something that happens period of time. Something like lightning is momentous, or seeing a firefly is momentous, right? But momentary and momentous, this is what happens where confusion happens, like in biennial and biannual. That's why I always ask you to give particular care to words that sound very similar but are distinct enough. So momentous, momentary actually means something that occurs in an instant, like very quickly, instant. Like I know that budget happens once a year, but it's not something that happens in an instant. Like it's fleeting. You see it and it goes away, right? That is something that's called fleeting. Like you before you can wink, something vanishes. And momentous means that it happens very rarely, but doesn't imply that that rare moment itself is very short. You get what I'm saying? Like I have climbed Mount Everest, so I have climbed it. It has not taken me a few seconds to climb, right? And even when I'm celebrating, I'm not celebrating for a few seconds. I like I have taken several days to climb the mountain, and then I stay there for like several hours. But I still call it a momentous journey, or a momentous time that I did that momentous achievement. So momentous means something that is important in a larger perspective of time. So in momentous, the focus is on rarity of the moment, while momentary, literally the focus is on the shortness of the moment. You understand what I'm saying? Momentary means it's gone, flick, and it's gone. And momentous means something that has that is historic, like that moment has never occurred in history. So what do you think is the focus with presenting the budget? What do you think is the focus with presenting the fact that it lasts for a very short time, or the fact that it is something very important that occurs only once in a year, right? So it's all about scales. If you view it in a scale, it appears small, but even a budget presentation is something that is very long, right? So what I want you to do is search for similar words, word pairs which are confusing, momentous and momentary. You'll notice that they, although you might confuse them or think that they mean the same, they don't, right? They have a very different kind. So momentary means something that is a blink and miss affair. You blink, you miss it. And momentous is something that is unprecedented in a long time. So C is more correct. Now coming to the mark and imprint question that I discussed, if you want now again see, mark and imprint both are correct. He wanted to leave his mark, he wanted to leave his imprint, right? Both are correct, but the thing is that just a second. Yeah, so the thing is that yeah, uh, can you please repeat your question? Just a second, can you please repeat your question? Okay. Okay. So both are appropriate. So we are relying, although we have already found the answer on momentous, still if you want, that is said, leave a mark. So it's something that is very particularly difficult task. right? And you leave a small mark there, so that's considered great. It's like leaving a mark, basically something that you know isn't very big, very large form of legacy there, but it's certainly some very difficult task that you attempted. There you left a mark. So mark is something that is smaller, obviously, and imprint is something that is larger, right? So mark can be, yes, mark can be insignificant, and imprint is something larger, but often leaving your mark is considered great, right? Like suppose you do a very difficult task and you are not able to leave a lot of do a lot of it, but you do a tiny portion of it, it's still considered greater than doing a lot of a smaller task where you can leave your imprint. But with politicians, what is the goal? What do you think? If he is presenting a budget, is he willing to leave a mark, or is he willing to leave an imprint? Obviously he's trying to influence, right? Rather than achieve greatness, he's trying to achieve influence. So he's not aiming a very lofty goal, he is aiming something that is very pervasive, that is very imposing, very broad sense of things, right? So imprint is much broader than a mark. That is my point, basically. So you can understand it that way. Again, very subjective territory. The author can argue that, okay, I did not intend it that way. Okay, that is always there. So don't rely too much on this. Momentous and momentary is what is the important one. Okay. Now, okay, question number 12. So, yeah. Okay. A cantankerous, obstinate, and ubiquitous press must be dashed by those in authority in order to dash the even greater values of freedom of expression and the right of people to know. Right. So now, okay. So these adjectives that are used, cantankerous, obstinate, and ubiquitous press, obstinate in particular, do you think that they refer to something that is positive, right, or neutral? No, it's clearly something that is not that is clearly unwanted. That is something that you're not very willing to have. Right. Obstinate is basically someone who you can't influence, like a donkey or a mule. If you kick it to move, it doesn't move, like it doesn't do your work. If it doesn't want to, you beat it, it still doesn't move. So a press, a kind of a media that cannot be moved by what you are trying to do, is a kind of a uh, a necessary evil sort of thing, right? So a cantankerous, obstinate, and ubiquitous press must be experienced and sustained are not correct because they are not negative, they are neutral words. Experienced and sustained, both are very neutral words, very general. Endured and suffered, you endure something that is difficult, you suffer something that is either difficult or bad or hurtful, right? So A and B, one of A and B is correct, that I'm sure. C and D are eliminated directly. So in order to dash the even greater values of freedom of expression and the right of the people to know. So what this is saying essentially is that we must tolerate media being media reaching out everywhere, and not listening to anyone and doing their thing. So that is something you wouldn't like always, but you must support and suffer it, bear it, or endure it. Why? Just to uphold the freedom of expression, which is a vital trait in democracy. Freedom of expression, media is thus called the fourth pillar of democracy, because freedom of expression supports the democratic structure and the democratic spirit. So that's why it's either A or it's B, right? So which one do you think is correct? Preserve or shield the great values of freedom of expression and the right of people to know? Which one do you think is correct? Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so you have all have got it right. So yeah, obviously preserve is correct, right? Because media is not, because you are not shielding something. Why will you shield something that is natural? Freedom of expression, the fact that I am able to speak is something that is very natural. So I don't need to shield it. I just need to stop attacking it, right? I just need to stop it. It's not a war happening there, right? It's something very natural. You cannot say that, okay, I am shielding some the grass from growing. Right, this is not something that happens. So similarly, preserve, obviously, what how you preserve something, you don't shield something, right? So if I say that there is a painting, classical painting or a monument, or say the Taj Mahal is losing its color, Taj Mahal is turning off white. So will you say that you are shielding Taj Mahal, or will you say that you are preserving Taj Mahal? Right. If I say this forest is deteriorating, this habitat, this river is being polluted, will you say that, okay, I'll shield the river from pollution? No, right? You'll try to preserve the river, right? So it makes more sense, right? So definitely the answer for 12 is A, right? Yeah. So, okay, any doubts here thus far? You can ask. So, okay. While the railway minister pointedly displayed his mastery of technical details, his arch rival on the Bihar political scene was unwilling to leave it. Okay, so this is a para-jumble question, right? Sentences given in the question when properly sequenced form a coherent paragraph. Okay. So now we have to find the most logical order of sentences. Remember, these CAT questions always ask you to find the most logical order. It doesn't say that one order necessarily does not make any sense. Just that one makes more sense than the other, right? So, and see, coherent paragraph, this is a very useful fact. Like, even if you forget this after this class, if you see the paper, you note this word, always remember it. This coherent is very important. It's a very important guideline. So go and look up in a dictionary, what does coherent exactly mean? How many senses does it mean? Right, coherent, cohesion, cohesive, all that. So you will automatically see, always I use an analogy of a fluid to describe passages or the flow of a text. If you view the passage as a fluid, then it is much better, right? Rather than viewing it as a piece of solid blocks, view it as a fluid that is flowing, not a series of blocks or jumbles that you are arranging in a puzzle sort of thing. Anyways, okay, so 13, I want you to quickly attempt it if you can, or maybe I'll just explain it. Okay, first of all, first thing you can notice, the two leaders did not let go of an opportunity. Which two leaders? So E is not correct, right? So I eliminate option A and C. E is not correct. Now, the only thing left is that D is the first option. So I don't even need to check if D is the first option. It's already given there, right? So what else is remaining is the confusion between A, E and B, C, right? So what I'll see is that okay, so let me check for uh, B. So let me check for B. With at least 100 men, women, and children dead, and several times the number injured, the need of the hour was to send relief to the victims. So certainly something has happened that has left 100 men, women, and children dead. Right. So aren't you curious as to what exactly happened? Right. What exactly happened that led to this? Right. So where I can see that okay, there is a tragedy caused by derailment of Rajdhani Express, right? So this is certainly an event that can lead to this drastic, this disastrous, occurrence that has happened. Hundreds of, at least 100 men, women, and children are dead. So you just quickly, when you are in the cat, start looking for an accident. Okay, this seems like something that is from an accident. So let me just look for an accident. Don't linger this long that okay, I'll just try to find something. I'll just try to do the. It's not just simply try to look where an accident is occurring. Hai. That should be the ideal, right? So you see now, very important fact. Uh, the two leaders did not let go of an opportunity to snipe at each other, and revealed how callous they could turn towards a tragedy of such a dimension. So such a dimension, how large a tragedy, what size dimension a tragedy, right? So that is certainly not there. Where it is? It is here. Human tragedy caused by the derailment of the Delhi-bound Rajdhani Express at Rafi. So see, you don't need all of this. Like you don't need to know where. You don't even need to know it was a Rajdhani Express. You just need to know it's a train, right? It got derailed, and this was a tragedy. And then these leaders, they showed that okay, even such a big tragedy, they can score there politically. So see, the ugly zest which a section of political class has been seeking to lend political color, and this sentence exactly explains why. Because the two leaders of Bihar, they started fighting over this train accident and blaming it on each other, right? So you see, even a human tragedy cannot move our politicians. So that is something that is clearly mentioned there. So now you can now it should be very clear that E, B, and C will come together, right? E, B, C will come in that order. If you have any doubts here, just let me know if you can see why. Just look at the logical order of the events. Just look at the logical order of the events. If you have any doubts here, ask me. You just try to imagine this scene. What happened first? The accident. What then happened was that television channels were covering it, and then politicians started fighting, right? So all that is happening there, right? So this is the incident of, this is the flow of the actual happening, that okay, first accident happened, then TV channels covered, and then the politicians started fighting. But when we are reporting something in a paragraph, someone might twist it and tell it, right? Like they first tell that the okay, Indian politicians level has fallen. Why has it fallen? Because They were fighting over a train incident. So in the actual order, the train incident comes later, and this one comes earlier, right? So that's how reported speech works. You go backwards, right? So don't assume that just because a chronology has happened in that way, it will be reported in the same order. You're getting what I'm saying? This is a very important general fact that I wish to emphasize here, right? So right, so that is there. Now if you look, e can we have already eliminated this, that e cannot come before a. See, okay, we have not done it yet. I'll just explain again. The two leaders did not let go an opportunity to snipe at each other and revealed how callous they could turn towards a tragedy of such a dimension. While the railway minister pointedly displayed his mastery of technical issues, his arch rival on the Bihar political scene was unwilling to leave it to a body of experts. Right. So this sentence is explaining that, okay, these two, which two leaders are we talking about? We are talking about these two leaders mentioned in sentence A. So if you look at sentence E and A, you can clearly understand that. Tell me what? You can clearly understand that E cannot come before A, right? Correct. Yeah. E cannot come before A. Anna. Right. So now if E cannot come before A, the only option that remains is B. So see, I did not solve it entirely as I usually do. Earlier, what I used to do, I used to find links and then connect. That was only to explain you. You can use that approach, but right now, since cat is on the doorstep, I'm telling you the fastest approach. In case you have options, just eliminate things, right? I know that E cannot come before A, so I eliminate all three and I get to D, A, E, B, C. Hai. Again, if you have any doubts, I'll just explain it again. See, the two leaders did not let go of an opportunity. Which two leaders? These two leaders. So how can E come before A? A will introduce the railway minister and his arch rival in Bihar. These two leaders. Then E will come. So E will always come after A. Maybe immediately after, maybe a few other sentences after, right? But always after, right? So EA cannot be a valid combination. AE can be a valid combination, right? So it's DAEBC. Right. If you check the others in the shortness of time, the favor of shortness of time, I'm not explaining in detail, but I hope you got how to eliminate the options, right? So that is something that you can do very quickly. And still, if you have any lingering doubts, just let me know. Okay, 14 is very easy. I want you to solve it. 14 is very short, very easy. See, first thing, he protested against any belief in the next world. Who protested against any belief in the next world? Anna, right? Who protested against any belief in the next world? So then yeah, okay, so then did Dr. Raman hold any religious belief? This seems to me to be the correct first sentence. Why? Because see, first of all, it explores, it opens the topic, because I can see the rest of the topic talks about specifics of religion, hell, rebirth, swarga, narka, heaven, all that, right? Very specific things. This sentence actually opens everything: agnosticism, belief in the next world, whether man born, lives and dies, or whether he has a new world after dying. All that is specific, right? What is general is that did Dr. Raman hold any religious beliefs? That is one reason. What is the second reason? Is that we have Dr. Raman here, right? Dr. Raman. So the person is being introduced here, right? And then he is referred he thrice, if you look. Uh, he, right? So this he refers to Dr. Raman. So D, I can be pretty sure that D is the first in this series. No, clear? Very clear? Any doubts? Okay. Now you can see that there are three options with this same choice, right? This same choice. Now let me see. Okay. He was quoted by a newspaper as having said something, 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 and he appeared to have inherited his father's agnosticism. So now you see, if he has inherited his father's agnosticism, we should, and he was quoted by a newspaper as having said, there is no heaven, swarga, hell, no rebirth, no reincarnation, and all this, right? So this makes sense that C explains B, right? C is an example of B. So I know that B, C is the order. C follows B. So up until what I can see, DBC is the order. So I can see DBC here. I can see DBC here. Right. Now for now I have to resolve between A and E. Now look very carefully. Okay. He protested against any belief in the next world. The only thing that was true to him was that a man is born, he lives, and he dies. Right. So I have to compare these two sentences, the first sentence and the last sentence, and I have to decide which one is correct. So if suppose the order was EA, the only thing that was true to him was that a man is born, he lives, and he dies. He protested against any belief in the next world. It doesn't make sense, right? But if I read it this way, he protested against any belief in the next world and the only thing that was true to him. So see, only is being used here, right? This is expanding. E is expanding on what A has said. First, A has bluntly said that he did not have any belief in the next world. Next world meaning any world after death. And then E is telling you that okay, the only thing that was true to him was that a man is born, he lives and dies. So E is clarifying A. Any doubts here that E is clarifying A? E is clarifying the stand of A, making it more specific, more elaborate, right? So certainly my answer would be that E follows A, not that A follows E. So D, B, C, A, E, D. Right, 14, it will be D. Clear? Very simple. Right. Now 15. Again, fairly easy one. Fairly easy one. So just try it. See, captivation comes nearer to the truth. I did not know Nehru all that at all intimately, but his personality made. So see, but is a very important word. I've told you again and again, and it does come. But is a tone changer. It changes the tone of the flow. Right. That if an argument is going in one direction after the introduction of but, the rest of the statement goes in the opposite direction. Right. Makes sense? Right. So you have to focus on that but, right? You have to focus on that but. So B introduces, sorry. So if you look, who is all this talk going about? You have no idea except for this sentence, Nehru. You're talking about Nehru. Nehru is the object, right? Who is the speaker? The speaker himself, who is talking in first person, I, me, us, myself, right? So you never know who the person is there, but I know someone is talking about Nehru. The person who has written this is talking about Jawaharlal Nehru, maybe any other Nehru, right? So let's assume any Nehru, because it's not given that it's Jawaharlal Nehru, so don't assume. So who is being talked about? Nehru. So Nehru is the subject or object of the arguments being made here, and the doer of the sentence is someone who is not named. है ना? Clear here. So okay, I've not got any answers by now. Anybody trying? Correct. That's very correct, Ankit. Yeah, absolutely. So the answer is C, right? Now let us see. Let us see if we can solve it. So see, first things first. I did not know Nehru at all intimately. I told you Nehru is being introduced here. This is B will be obviously be the first one. Then okay, then okay, now we have to see. In fact, I did not even meet him many times. Doesn't this make perfect sense after B? I did not know Nehru at all intimately. I did not know a person, and in fact, I did not even meet him many times. So you see, and you understand what is being said. It is being said that I did not know Nehru very closely, and the fact is that I didn't even meet him a lot of times. So it's not just that I did not know him very well. It's actually that I did not even meet him so many times. So it's again very clear, right? D is again clarifying or expanding on what B has said. So BD makes sense, but BD is there in all three options. So very again very difficult choice. Now I think let's try for C. So but his personality made an immediate impression at one's first meeting with him. Bang on, this is the next sentence. Why? Because meeting. Do you see? I did not meet him many times, and in the next sentence you have meeting. In the this sentence you have meeting. So obviously this is the next sentence, right? So he's saying that even though I did not meet Nehru many times, Nehru was such a person that if you meet him once, he leaves a very strong impression on you. Understand? So very clear there, right? So again, BDC is the order that it comes to. Now, nor was the effect he made just an impression. The word is too weak and too cold. Captivation comes nearer to truth. Now, I have to arrange A and E. These remain. है ना? So, whether it should be EA or whether it should be AE. So, now this sentence. But his personality made an immediate impression at one's first meeting with him, and this impression did not change over the years. So, whenever someone met Nehru, even once, they were imprinted by his personality, impressed by his personality, right? But and then this impression, so see, very simple, impression, these two words are likely connected, right? Now let me just check. I'm not saying that just because you find impression both ways you blindly assume that this sentence follows this, right? Don't do that. But you certainly get somewhere to look for. Nor was the effect he made just an impression. The word is too weak and too cold. Now this makes sense to follow C, right? Because he's saying that neither did the impression change over the years, the impression that he made, nor was the effect merely an impression alone, right? So the word is too weak and too cold. Anyone got what this means? This means that the word impression, to describe the sensation that Nehru had upon you when you meet him, the word impression has failed the author. So the word impression itself is too weak and too cold and too bland. The word impression does not suffice to do justice to the feeling that the author got by meeting Nehru. So that's why what he got is that, yeah, it was much more than that. It was much more than an impression. So impression is not the right word. So the author's dictionary has failed him. So he looked for another word. What is the another word? Captivation. So he said that Nehru was such a person that when I met him, I was captivated. I was not just impressed, I was captivated by Nehru's charming personality. So that is where captivation comes nearer to the truth. So even captivation fails to describe it, but it performs better than impression in describing the feeling that the author had for Jawaharlal Nehru. Right. So you understand that, right? Very easy. So BDCEA, very easy if you understand this nuance that I told you here. But BDCEA, okay. So 15 is C. All right. Clear? Any doubts here? Just ask me, because if you don't understand this, you'll have problems later on. Very crucial examples. Okay. Okay. So moving on. 16. Okay. Now see, each question consists of 4 sentences on a topic. Some sentences are grammatically incorrect or inappropriate. Select the option that indicates the grammatically correct and appropriate sentences. So again, even if you think that such a question will not come this year, what matters is that it will help you identify grammatical flaws, and these will help you across every kind of question, every section, right? So don't think that, okay, this is not very useful for me. Anyway, so the point here is that, okay, so we have to find sentences that are grammatically incorrect. So I give you some time, read it, and try to do that yourself for this one first. Okay. Uh, okay, tell me. Okay, did you notice here it should be with a per capita income? Very minute, right? Very minute detail. But if you miss it, you miss it. Philippines is a country with a per capita income of about $1,000, more than double that of India, right? And even here, I think there should be a comma, if I'm not mistaken, right? More than double that of India, or maybe something like this. A punctuation should be there, and more importantly, this A is there, right? So I'm pretty sure that C is wrong, but C occurs across 3 options, right? So didn't help me a lot by identifying this. Now let us see with the other options. But the problems faced by the poor in this country of 84 billion people are similar to that of India's poor, right? Anna. So at first glance, this sentence looks correct. Anybody can tell me what is wrong with sentence D? Oh, okay, yeah, okay. A very important point made. Yeah, sorry. So this asks us to. That's why it's very important to read the question. Select the option that indicates the grammatically correct. Yeah. So if options are given, you can certainly use that. Okay, C is present in all 3. So if you have identified that C is wrong with a per capita income, A and B are correct, because it asks you to indicate the grammatically correct option, right? So yeah, always read the questions, never miss it. It's very important. So yeah, this question asks us to choose the correct sentences. So I know that C is wrong, so A and B are correct. But still, I want you to tell me why D is wrong. What do you think is the reason that D is wrong? So I know that answer is A and B. A and B are correct. But tell me why D is wrong. Why do you think D is wrong? Very simple. See, it's the most basic rule of English grammar, whether subjective, objective, whether for actual English exams, like exams of English language, or aptitude tests like CAT, where you just have to apply English. I've always told you there should be agreement in number, tense, case, and gender. right? Number 10 is case and gender, subject verb agreement, reference referee agreement, right? Pointer agreeing with what is being pointed at. Can you tell me where the agreement fails in D? The problems are plural, right? Problems faced by the poor of, basically what the sentence is saying, problems that the poor people in Philippines face are similar to the problems that the poor people in India face. That is the idea here, right? But what is wrong here is problems faced by the poor are similar to that of India's poor. That is singular. It shouldn't it be those of India's poor, right? Those of India's poor, like, makes more sense, right? It's plural. Plural goes with plural. So if Filipinos have many problems, Indians also have many problems, right? India will only have a one problem, and then Philippines will have several problems, and we'll say that okay, several problems of Philippines are similar to India's one problem. That isn't the case, right? So you understand, it was what was it written? It was written that. Now I've converted it to those. Now it agrees. Plural agrees with plural, right? So there is consistency. So that's why D is wrong. So C and D are wrong. So any option containing C, but already D was not there in any option either. But suppose this question was asked in, type in your answer or such a format. Right. Yeah. No, see, okay, very good question. One of you have asked me a question that the death of 74 persons in a stampede at Pasig City, a suburb in Manila, was a terrible tragedy, but what triggered it is equally tragic. So someone has told me that it should be was, right? Now see where you are going wrong with this. See, you could be correct, but what you have missed is what triggered it is equally tragic, because the problem that triggered that stampede has still not gone away. It is still there, right? And what is that problem? Poverty. So poverty caused the stampede. Now you are saying that your doubt was that shouldn't it be was, right? But why it isn't was is because the problem still exists, and the problem still is tragic, right? Understood? Got it? No? Yeah. So the problem still persists, and it persists to be tragic. It is not only there, it is still tragic. So that's why this is correct. It was a very good question. Thank you for asking that one. It will help clarify other doubts. So yeah, 16 is D. Okay, clear? Now, next question. Very quickly, let's do this. Said to be a literary historian's despair, Indian literature as a body of work is surely one of the most stupendously rich traditions the world has. But today, Indian writers are finding it hard to. Okay, so just read it and give it a try. There are longer sentences, slightly longer sentences. But see, always remember my rule. One error is sufficient to rule out the sentence. If you find one error, don't try to look for the second error. One error makes sure that the sentence is out. Okay. So again, don't miss to read the question. The question is asking, select the option that indicates the grammatically correct and appropriate sentence. Correct ones. Just select the correct ones. Eliminate the wrong ones. Okay. Okay. But today, Indian writers are finding it hard to reclaim patterns of thought specific with their culture. Specific with. It should be specific to, right? Specific to their culture. है ना? That should be the correct approach, right? Now let us see this. See, all our languages are showing symptoms of stress because a gap is opening between the language of ordinary people sedated by the mass media and those writers in search of a language that can bring forth their truest in most feelings. Now this sentence seems to be correct. There doesn't seem to be any error. So whenever that is the case, you feel that okay, there is no major error. Always look for categorically look for conjunctions and prepositions. ठीक है? Up, down, right, left, ठीक है? All those words, and all that. So even conjunctions are easier. Prepositions, always look for prepositions. If there is no conjunction, you will find it most likely. Like if an and is missing, your brain will detect it. But prepositions are difficult, especially when they follow something. So look, a gap is opening. Gap is opening between the language of ordinary people. Do you think this is correct? Gap is opening between the language of ordinary people. Shouldn't it be opening up between the language of the ordinary people, right? Because opening up is a specific sense being used. Opening is general. Gap is opening. No, gap is opening up between the language of ordinary people, right? Very minor detail, but if you miss this, you get the entire question wrong, right? So you see how tough a call can it be at times, right? So when you are in doubt, inspect each and every word and see if there is something off with it. Inspect each and every word systematically, and always try to look for prepositions when you feel that okay, this sentence seems correct to me, right? So A and D are correct, right? A and D. If you find any mistakes with A and D, just let me know so I can explain why they are correct. Like explaining why they are correct requires me to take a positivist approach. So I want you to tell me if you found any mistakes so I can tell you why those mistakes are not mistakes. Otherwise, you'll have to just accept the answer. 17 basically is D. Okay, if you have any doubts with A and D are correct, why A and D are correct, just show me where the mistake is and I'll let you know of what is there. Okay, now see question number 18. So see this in each following questions has a paragraph from which the last sentence has been deleted. From the given options, choose the one that completes the paragraph in the most appropriate way. Okay, so we have to put a sentence in there. So for this reason, I recommended you the exercise of reading various passages from different sources and eliminating one sentence from each, right? So that you get a practice of this. Like if you remove one sentence, the meaning of the passage changes. You understand what I'm saying? Without one sentence, the meaning of the passage can change drastically what is being intended, right? So what you need to find is a link, a flow that indicates that okay, something should follow up here, right? So right, anybody wants to attempt it? See, yeah. Okay, great, great, correct answer. Okay, the media of today wields over the years, journalistic values have suffered erosion as larger social values. Publishing has changed from being a mission to a business. Basically, saying that journalism has converted from something you do for your passion to something you do to make money, right? And then making that money is obviously involved with people influencing you to write something in their favor. But commercial viability for survival and again, it's important to make money because without money no journalistic venture can survive. Your newspaper won't survive without money, right? Even if you're very honest, but the ultimate goal has to be public service, not profit and market dominance. So you make money, but that should not be your intent. You should not do journalism for the sake of making money. That is the point being made here, right? So the media today wields immense power, shaping the national agenda by what it writes or portrays. See, read the question. Last sentence has been deleted. Do you think this sounds like a last sentence? Doesn't it sound like a sentence which is creating ground, opening for another paragraph or opening for another set of sentences? Like whenever you start writing, you typically use these words, right? The state of art in India today is pitiable, or the state of cinema in India today is laughable, or I say that okay, the media today has this. So today words that use today and use talk about a general thing like the media in its entirety, they are typically introductory sentences. Clear or not, right? So it cannot be the last sentence. Doesn't There are other reasons to eliminate A also, but I'm telling you the simplest way you can eliminate A, that it doesn't feel like the last sentence. Although it in no other way also fits here anyways. Like give me one argument in favor of A that you think makes it fitting here. It doesn't, even the tone doesn't suit. But I'm telling you one way you can remove it. The best, simplest way you can remove it. Journalism with honorable exceptions does a disservice to both to media and democracy. Right. Now that is there. It does with except some journalists, most journalism does a disservice to both media and democracy. But still, this is a bit extreme for coming here, right? And then see, here we are talking about what was the second last sentence or the last sentence in this para, which will become the second last sentence once you put the sentence. What was it saying? That you should not do journalism for the sake of money, although money matters, but your ultimate goal should be to serve the public, not to make profit. So neither A nor B is following that line of reasoning, right? It's not part of that continuum where gradual change is happening. It's suddenly going back to the first point, this sentence, in fact, right? that media is bad, journalism is bad. Obviously, we have explained that earlier. Why will we again say? Will I say that journalism is bad? Today journalists are being influenced by corporations and politicians. Journalism is bad. Today journalists are taking bribes. Journalism is bad. Will I say the same thing again and again? No, right? If I have gone on a line of thought from general to specific, I'll not return to saying that. I made my point earlier. Journalism is bad. This first sentence said that journalistic values have suffered, and still he was so euphemistic, have perhaps suffered erosion. He's not even saying they have been destroyed. And then this very extreme stand saying that journalism does disservice to media and democracy, right? So right. So B is obviously very wrong. In no way you can justify B. Now let's see D. The press professes to be and is indeed a watchdog. Now this is on the opposite end of the spectrum. So now this is not saying anything critical about the media. While B was criticizing media a lot, D is not at all criticizing. So both are alien to this position here. Very clear? Any doubts here? This is a simple but elegant example. So I want you to clarify if you have any doubts with this. Hope this is very clear to everyone. At the end of the day, the media remains a public trust which alone justifies its characterization as the fourth estate. See, at the end of the day, not just because it contains end, at the end of the day is a very good way of finishing a paragraph, right? At the end of the day, literally having the word end also, but even figuratively, at the end of the day, that is makes sense, right? Last sentence has been deleted. Very likely that C was the last sentence. If you look at other aspects, the tone, the graduation, the gradient, I mean, and everything, it fits very beautifully sloping into the passage C, right? Any doubts here why C should fit as the last sentence? Just let me know if there are any doubts. No, clear? No? Okay, great. So now, yeah. So very simple. Just detect the tone. Just detect that something. If your friend is telling you this, will he say it in this order? Or if your friend tells you, what happens is that we often forget that passages are also a way of conversation, a written conversation. It's still a conversation with the reader. Although the reader does not say anything, one-sided, obviously, but still it has that tone, right? So just when if you are not able to solve any question, just picture in your head. If your friend is telling you it in this way, like he's introducing something, saying the main part, again going back to the introduction, will it sound okay or will it not sound okay, right? So try to hear that in your head, you'll find it much easier. Okay. Anyways, now okay. Contrary to the earlier belief that the internet and email could diminish real relationships, this passage, see, I will not even read it. I directly know that, okay, this passage is saying that your parents told you that social media and internet and everything will destroy real human relationships because they are long distance things where you cannot see each other. But some research or survey was conducted and it showed that okay, it found a correlation between digital communication and real life human relationships, right? So basically I got the point. I didn't even read the passage. I've not even read this passage earlier, right? To simulate that how will I myself behave in cat when solving all these questions. So I've never read this passage even once, but I'm telling you this is what is there. I've not even read it. My I just take one conclusion from the entire passage, that uh, this passage is saying that one experiment occurred that showed that social media interaction actually helped relationships, real world relationships, rather than affecting them, which was the popular opinion. Very simple. Okay, that is there. Now, just to break it down, what is abrupt here is that the report entitled found that email. So the experiment that is being talked about hasn't been concluded, right? Hasn't been, this experiments thing finding hasn't been concluded here. So that is what I need to look in the last sentence, है ना? So identify what you need to look without even looking at the options. You can find that. So the number of internet users are more in the US than in other countries. What the hell? Why should this be here, right? That doesn't make sense. Even it doesn't make sense here where we are reporting 60 million Americans, because it's a side fact. I just mentioned that, okay, just to give you an idea of scale, okay, 60 million Americans live decisions are. Why will I need to specify that my figure of 60 million was more or less, like what does it matter? A is obviously baloney, right? Eliminated all. So the old cliche that times of crisis reveal who your real friends are seems to hold as true in the cyberspace as it does in the offline world. Now, I have no idea why this sentence is there, but I cannot find anything to outright eliminate it, right? Maybe what I cannot see, unbeknownst to me, there is an entire line of things that will follow this sentence. And I don't know. In the next paragraph, there could be something that builds upon what this is building. So let me just keep it on the side. The internet is beyond doubt the fastest mode of communication. So what does it matter? The report entitled The Strength of Internet Ties, it says that email does not replace but strengthen social ties. Email makes social ties better. Right? If you're emailing your friend, your friendship deepens. It doesn't lessen your friendship. Right? So again, C doesn't make any sense there. The need of bonding with family and friends is felt more during misfortunes. Right? So where are we talking about misfortunes? B and D are both talking about misfortunes, but no misfortune is there here, right? But I cannot eliminate it alone on that criteria that it is not there. Maybe that they are introducing it here and they will expand on it later. And that fact can always be there. So what will I rely on here is that see, the old cliche that times of crisis reveal who your real friends are seem to hold as true in cyberspace as it does in offline world. Although these both sentences B and D, A and C are eliminated, clear no, and B and D are also not seeming to be correct anyhow. But I need to find which is the most correct, even if it's not 100% fitting. So what you can see, although B and D both are talking about friends in what we say fair weather friends, or what we say friends who opposite, I mean what we say friends who help you in times of need, like when most friends abandon you, the real friends who stick around with you in times of need, that is what is being talked about here, right? Although they both talk about the same thing, this talks only about that, while B actually talks about the internet and offline world and cyberspace, right? It actually talks about cyberspace. Clearly B is the only one that we have correctly, right? Even I don't feel that there is something that is very apparent just because this paragraph is cut out of context input. So that is what they will do. They will try to trick you. But you get the crux of the argument here, right? The crux of the reasoning is that this sentence has nothing about cyberspace or internet. This doesn't talk about digital world. It only talks about general, that okay, the general idea that when there is something bad happening, then your family bonds get stronger when you're facing some hardship together, right? That is okay, but what does it have to do with social networks and the internet, है ना? So obviously A and C are eliminated, D is going another way, B although seems vague, it still has a connect with the passage. That is what counts, right? So B is definitely my answer here. 19 will be B. Clear? If you have any doubts with this, just let me know. Okay. Final. Last question for today, and then we can leave. The rest will be your homework. Okay. So solve the rest. There are 30 more questions. You can solve the rest as your homework. Uh, okay. Very quickly, let us solve this. Cell phones, being mobile, movable, are so convenient that we empathize with anyone who does not use them. Okay, so now look, what is the question given? In each question, there are four sentences. Each sentence has pairs of words, phrases that are italicized and highlighted. From the italicized and highlighted words, select the most appropriate words to form correct sentences. Then from the options below, choose the best one. Right. So what do you think should be happening here? Like, see, very close words, very similar words, right? Empathize, sympathize, movable, mobile, right? Comprise, compose, comprehends, apprehends, money is money, right? So again, very confusing here. So remember, don't get stuck at one word. Okay, suppose you find it very difficult. What is the difference between mobile and movable? Especially, what is the difference in this context? Like, cell phone is literally called mobile, but it's called a mobile phone, right? Because earlier landline phones were stuck at one place with a cord, and you had to put a plug and everything. Uh, you have to put it in the DC connection, right? So that's why they are called mobile. But you will also say that I cannot either say that cell phones are not movable. I can move cell phones, obviously, and even the individual parts of cell phones are nowadays movable. So very confusing, right? So if you find mobile and movable confusing, don't get stuck there. Just move ahead, right? Just move ahead. Okay. So one very clever trick what I can do here is I can see if there is any option where three of them are of one kind and one is of a different kind, right? So if I look, you look here, A, B, A, A. So if I can prove that this B has B correct, the second one answer is B rather than A, I can eliminate all three simultaneously and zero in on my correct answer, right? This is the trick to solving questions really fast. So let me see if that is correct. Okay. You understand what I'm saying? You just identify one where you can, find that correspondence. So though he works as a money changer, he cannot readily identify the monies that he handles at work. So monies is used in a very different sense. This plural monies is used in a very specific sense when there are various types of money mostly used by economists, right? For us any money is money, right? So we don't pluralize it. Money itself is plural, right? So I have a huge sum of money, so it's something that I say, okay, I have a lot of money. I don't say I have a lot of monies. So when if he's working as a money changer, he cannot readily identify the monies that he handles at work. So now you can be pretty sure that okay, he's just a he's a person that he is handling some money, right? So what should be the answer? Tell me, should it be money or should it be monies? Yeah. Why? Why should it be monies? Because this guy, the money changer, he is serving as a he's serving as a money changer, right? So he's converting one form of money to another form of money, right? So very correct answer that you gave. So kudos on that. So yeah, he's changing one form of money into another form of money, right? So that is the reason that you can say that okay, now I can go with money. Had it been a very normal person who is going to the market or buying something, it's fine. Even if you have the 100 notes or 1,000 notes or even coins and notes, say that okay, it's just money. You cannot say that okay, this is monies or something like that. Okay, right? So that is one line of argument. Okay, but okay, I told you this. I told you this argument. But do you think that I made a logical flaw while telling you this? Do you think that there is something that I did wrong here? Okay, okay. No problem. I'm just trying to confuse you. Okay. Anyway, so just think about it. If you have any doubts, just don't take anything I say for granted. Okay. If you think that it should be money, it should not be money, just let me know. Okay. Okay. So you just solve this yourself. We're a bit short on time. I just want to cover one reading passage before I go on this, right? But just think about what I told you about money and monies. And if you have any doubts, just let me know after the class as to why it should be monies or why it should be money. And similarly for mobile and movable, you have to let me know of this, right? And if you maybe if you again my point in the actual exam, don't get stuck on money and monies and spend 5 minutes thinking on this. If you think this is hard, use a simpler one that helps you crack it. Maybe compose and comprise, maybe sympathize and empathize help you crack it better. है ना? So always try to find something that helps you crack it more easily, right? So that is always there, right? So just let me know what this interesting question is at the end. Don't assume that if I told you money is, it is necessarily correct. Just think about it. Okay, can it be money? Can it be monies? Let me know, right? So let us just cover one passage and then you can go. Well, let us cover one passage very quickly. Okay, okay. So let us cover this passage and you can what I'm leaving, you can do it later. So okay, just a second. Yeah. So this is the passage. This is the passage. Now I read it very quickly. Okay, read it very quickly, and it's a pretty long passage to be honest, but that is the whole point. Just read this passage and then you can leave. So see, I'll just explain to you how I would approach this passage if it comes in exam, right? And just to make it more difficult for you, I have not given any line breaks or para breaks. If you're reading this passage, simply what you need to do, you just see it, okay, you just see it, and very quickly I'll just show you how you approach it. See, George Bush and Gordon Brown are right. I imagine in my mind, if you don't know who they are, it's fine. If you know, okay, they're right-wing politicians. There should be no nuclear weapons in the Middle East. So I know that, okay, there is something talking about the politics that is happening there. So when I'm making the first read, I just quickly go through the passage. But I mark important ideas. I mark the approximate location of important ideas. So I don't go with what conflagration means. I don't care what it means, right? So I just know that, okay, there is some problem being talked about here. Then there is sanctions on Israel. I know that USA has imposed sanctions on a lot of countries in the Middle East. Like them, I believe that Iran is trying to acquire a bomb. I also believe that it should be discouraged by a combination of economic pressure and bribery. So again, I don't need to know that it is combination of economic pressure and bribery, right? I just need to understand what the tone is happening, what is the tone of the passage and where all the tone is changing. Right. This is the first read. Remember, when I go back, what I do, when I where completed the passage, I go back to a question. Then I see, okay, Israel's supreme self-confidence and audacity. Then I will read the passage properly, come back, see where self-confidence and audacity is located, and then try to read it properly and understand what is happening. Yeah, initially, you just need to get a basic idea of the passage. So the key to reading in the actual cat is placing flags, right? You have to place flags throughout the passage. That will help you get back to those checkpoints later. है ना? So again, I see Bush and Brown who maintain their nuclear arsenals in defiance of non-proliferation treaty. So the basic idea is that this passage is criticizing the United States and Britain for their discriminatory treatment of Iran. Like they are not imposing sanctions on Israel, but they are imposing sanctions on Iran, even though both are fighting each other. Right. Then I see, I just move very quickly. I don't read all these names. So who is Mordechai Vanunu? I don't care who is Mordechai Vanunu. I see that, okay, Israelites, Mossad agents, they kidnapped some Iranians, they kept them in jail, and something happened, right? And then, again, I don't need to know who Yitzhak Rabin is. I just see that, okay, they met, they discussed that Israel has nuclear weapons, and America still accepted that, okay, it's fine to for Israel to have nuclear weapons, right? See, I've covered almost half of the passage. I've not read anything as such properly. I've not read that this is 18 years this December. So you will have to leave these details. If you focus so much of time, you will just spend half of your time on reading all the passages and not be able to give any time to answering them actually. Right. So despite Israel's blatant disregard of the agreement. So see, basically I understand that till this point, I've arrived so far. I've arrived here towards the end of the passage. What I've gained is Israel has a bad track record, but still America favors it, allows it to keep nuclear weapons, allows it to be armed, right? That is something that I've got till now. Now, see, Iran is dangerous. That the author is dangerous because it used chemical weapons when it was attacked by chemical weapons. But so I always ask you to look for tone changing words. Even when you are scanning, look for tone changing words. So now if you look, yes, Iran under Ahmadinejad is dangerous. So you might think that, okay, Iran is dangerous. So the author is against Iran. No, the author is not against Iran. The author is against Israel. He is saying that, okay, Iran is dangerous, but Israel is more dangerous, right? That's why I always ask you to look for such words, right? Words that change or inflect the tone of the passage, even when scanning, even when not thoroughly reading. But and yet and also such words you have to look at very carefully. So Israel used chemical weapons that I have seen, and finally the so uh, criticizing USA for not criticizing Israel. Right, Israel is using these dangerous possessing these atomic weapons, using the chemical weapons, and all that weapons of mass destruction. So if USA can attack Iran or Iraq for having WMDs, why can't it control or sanction, at least sanction Israel, right? So final sentence very important. When they will demand that rules they impose on Iran should also apply to Israel, right? So I have told you how to read the passage. See how less of a time it took me to read it, hardly a few minutes, right? Even though I was explaining it to you, when I read it for myself, I'll not be forced to speak. So it will be even lesser. So you get the idea how to read the passage, right? So I want you to solve the rest of it. Be very particular about solving it. Do solve it, and then get back to me after solving. Okay. So there are like a lot of questions. I have only covered 20. Okay. Let me know of what you think. If you have any doubts, you can just drop me a text. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so as I said, we'll begin. Today we'll proceed at a much higher pace than we usually do. This is a more realistic pace rather than an explanatory pace. Usually I dissect each question and give you multiple ways of solving, explain each, reading between the lines and everything. Today we are not going to do that. Today we are going to solve